You're listening to the Hal and Steve English podcast, a comfy place to talk about all the great and not so great parts of teaching ESL abroad. I'm Steve, and I've got Hal here too.
Howdy.
Today, we're going to talk about life as a public school teacher in Korea. Stay tuned.
One, two, three.
All right, guys. As always, head to halandsteveenglish.com to check out our really awesome materials. We got games, we've got adult speaking lessons, we've got pattern English lessons, we've got free video games. Well, we don't have free video games. We've got everything else, though. It's pretty cool, so head over there to check it out. halandsteveenglish.com. All right, after that shameless plug, let's talk about our first year teaching in Korea. So who should tackle this first, you or me?
I love it when you tackle things first.
I'm gonna tackle things first. I'm gonna go for it. Gonna really tackle it. So, first year teaching in Korea. For those of you who listened to one of our previous podcasts of how we actually ended up here, you'll know that I was just an aimless little boy after graduating university, and I didn't know what to do. And between law school and teaching abroad, I decided to go teach abroad. And I lost out on my first placement, actually. Originally, they were going to place me in Goje. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's an island south of Busan. And I was really stoked because nothing can be more exotic than that, right? Headed to a country that I really haven't thought about in my life before, besides in history class, learning about the Korean War. And then heading out to a random place, pretty isolated, on the ocean. And up to that point, I'd been living in Missouri. So I went to university in Missouri. So that was really exciting. But as I would soon come to find out, there's a lot of bureaucracy involved. So my paperwork was done incorrectly or something was messed up. So I missed that opportunity. The next one they put me in was in Paju. And for folks that are new to Korea or don't really know Korea that well, Paju is the big expanse of countryside north of Seoul. And I was right there on the easternmost part of Paju, right next to a county called Yeoncheon, actually, which is what people like to, whenever they think about the northernmost part of Korea, right next to the DMZ, they often are thinking about Yeoncheon, right? So that's where I ended up teaching, and it was definitely not as desolate as where you ended up teaching, Hal. But I ended up there, and my experience getting there was pretty wild. I know we talked about this a few shows ago, but I just hopped off the airplane, and the expectation the recruiter had set for me was, pretty great. Oh, someone's going to get you from the airport. I thought, pretty cool. But just like you, there was a frantic person waiting for me at the airport. He must have been the recruiter's father or boss himself. And as I exited the gate with all these really heavy pieces of luggage, this dude just ran up to me frantically. And frantic is the behavior you'll often see when you're in a rush and all your Korean peers have to go do something. It's just a million shuffled steps to get anything done. So kind of makes you nervous, it makes everybody anxious, makes everybody nervous. But this guy just ran up to me, frantically grabbed me, just looking left, right, where to go, running, shuffling. And he exchanged my money, he got my bus ticket, and he threw me on a bus. He shouted at the bus driver something, which I guess was, oh, make sure this Wei-Gukin gets off at this stop. Wei-Gukin being the word for foreigner. And actually, now that I've lived here a while, and I think I joked about this the other episode, I must be like 50% Korean, at least in my habits alone by now. I really appreciate that little dude who picked me up from the airport, because obviously that's not his job. After living here for so long, I know he was probably just some dude at the office, and the boss is like, yo man, you gotta go get this kid from the airport. And he didn't know what was going on, he didn't speak English, he was terrified to interact with me, but he really took one on the chin, and he went there, and he basically saved my life, because I would not know what to do at the airport. So that was my first time really out of the country, except for resort places. So I've been to the Cayman Islands, Bahamas, Mexico, but I'd never been to a place so far removed from American tourists, right? So yeah, my first impression was, what the hell is going on? 5 years later, my impression is, oh, that little dude was alright. And that's basically the story of my first time in Korea, was all these things that I thought were super negative experiences, but now that I've lived here for a long time, I realize that everybody was actually being really nice to me, because it wasn't their job to do these things in the first place. So I thought I had a bunch of negative experiences because my apartment wasn't where it was supposed to be, my job wasn't what it was supposed to be. It wasn't what I expected from what my recruiter said. And I assume that's what a lot of foreigners here deal with. There's that expectation that you have of what the job should be, what the training period should be, and all these things. And you're let down, or you're disappointed, or you're angered when these things change. But in hindsight, now I realize, whoa, it was not my co-teacher's job to train me. Nobody trained her on how to train foreign teachers. It was just the government decided to hire foreign teachers, threw me in there, and she was surviving. She was just dog paddling through the ocean, through all that craziness. But anyway, that pretty much sums up my experience. And I guess to get further into it, should I get more into it and tell the actual tale, or do you want to tell everybody about you?
I don't know. I think keep rolling.
I'm gonna keep rolling then. So, bus time, right? So I'm on the bus, and I remember just leaving Incheon Airport and looking out the side of the bus and waiting for, I hate to say this, but like Last Samurai music to come on. Like your traditional, what you expect of like an original soundtrack from a movie set in Asia to sound like. It didn't, but that's okay. I looked out the windows and there's just a bunch of huge apartments, and those really interesting pine trees that I've always seen in movies about Korea or Japan or China. And so I was starting to get this sensation that, whoa man, you are really abroad. And I don't think that really hits you until a few weeks later in full, but I was starting to get that feeling, and that was pretty awesome. The bus drove me into some part of Incheon. It must have been downtown Incheon. The bus driver yelled at me, got me off the bus, got all my pieces of luggage off the bus, and then there was this little woman who I would later find out was Miss Moon, my co-teacher there, to pick me up. And I know it was a Saturday or a Sunday. Must have been a Saturday. And so she picked me up with her husband, and then they drove me from there 3 hours north to where I was going to end up living in Dongducheon, which was about 40-minute bus ride from my school, and it's right up there next to Yeoncheon and Paju. So basically, folks, if you imagine Seoul, where I lived was about an hour and a half north of that, and then where I taught was about 40 minutes northwest of that. And in that moment, I remember thinking, what kind of dog and pony show is this? What are they doing? They're just frantically picking me up. There's no order to this. It's frantic, it's hectic, this is uncomfortable. What did I sign up for? And again, folks, I've been here for a while now, and I realized, whoa, that dude that picked me up from the airport was just ordered to do that by a random guy, probably, and didn't even know what he was doing. And then my co-teacher on her weekend drove me with her husband 3 hours out into the middle of nowhere, and then 3 hours back to their home. And before all that even began, they had driven to the bus stop to get me about an hour and a half away from their home. So they spent 10 hours driving. So in my mind, I was like, this is the most unprofessional thing I've ever experienced. But in hindsight, it's just all these individuals taking up the slack for basically the government not having a program in place, but all these people being really generous with their time, really generous with their money. So now, like, I have this really great impression of that first day. But yeah, they took me up to my apartment. They put me in my one room. They bought me a bunch of great food. They filled me up with potato salad sandwiches, which I had never had before. Usually we just eat potato salad on the side of a basket of ribs and barbecued chicken. But they threw me into my room, and then they dragged me out for samgyeopsal dinner. And I didn't even know what samgyeopsal was at that time. And this is before it was a big trend in the United States. It was before the Korean wave, by about a year or two. And I just remember being so exhausted and so dirty and not wanting to be there, but being polite. And again, I didn't realize, like, in my mind, I was like, oh, these people are infringing upon my individual, like, what I want to do. But in hindsight, they drove 10 hours that day, and they made sure to stay with me for dinner because they didn't want to be rude. They didn't want me to feel lonely. But when they dropped me off my apartment, they hastily showed me the bus stop that was about 20 minutes away from my apartment.
Wow, 20 minutes away.
I'm a slow walker, so it's probably 10 minutes for a normal person. But they showed me the bus stop and how to get to work, and they showed me the number. But again, this is all in Korean, right?
Yeah.
So, and they only showed me at one time. So I didn't have a phone, I didn't have internet in my apartment, I had nothing. I had to remember that one late night experience of being walked or being driven to a random bus stop in the center of the city and pointed, which way should I take it, the northbound way or the southbound way, right? And a random bus number. And then I was sent back home after dinner, and I was just there. And that was a really wild first day for me. I know yours was much wilder, but it was just a really weird experience because as I was sitting in that one room, I realized nothing is what I thought it was going to be like. The experience from being picked up at the airport to that point of going to sleep was just so wildly different. It was, my first experience was, this is disorganized, this is frantic, this is going to be messy. When that little dude picked me up from the airport and exchanged my money and got me on the bus. And then I would see these little previews of what the rest of the year would be. Like when they drove me to the random bus stop that I had to take every day to school and expected that to be enough for me to figure out how to get to work. And again, you know, you're a foreigner coming to a foreign country. The expectation should be on you to figure out how you're going to get to your place of employment. Shouldn't be your employer if they didn't set the expectation. If they did not set an expectation that they would be helping me with all those things. Because they advertised it as an immersive experience abroad with a lot of help. But anyway, yeah, that type of disorganized, last-minute affair and frantic, hectic running around was really a preview into the rest of the year. And at the beginning, I really was just so unhappy with it because it felt like these people lied to me. These people told me this is what my life was going to be like, but it's not. And I forgot to mention, my contract said I'd be 5 minutes away from my school. I'm 40 minutes away by bus from my school.
Ooh, yeah.
My contract said my recruiter said I'd be 45 minutes away from Seoul. It's a little white lie. Technically, I would be 45 minutes away from Dobongsan, which is technically Seoul. But that's like saying, I don't know, that's like saying, oh yeah, you're gonna be 45 minutes from America if you're living in Siberia. Like, that doesn't really make sense. Like, you're 45 minutes away from a random island in Alaska. But yeah, in hindsight, I really enjoyed it. That was great. I was 40 minutes away because my co-teacher, who had spent 10 hours driving me around from the airport to my new town, decided that I wouldn't want to live in the countryside next to the school. I would want to live in a nice new apartment in the center of a big city that was on the subway line on the way to Seoul. She actually saved me, but I didn't know that. All I knew that was, oh, I was supposed to be 45 minutes away from Seoul, and I was supposed to live 5 minutes away from the school. But 5 minutes away from the school was a rice farm. And then actually 40 minutes around the school was only rice farms. So she actually saved me, but I would never have known any of these things. All I knew at that time was, this is not what they told me. And so yeah, the year kind of just progressed like that. I went to school and just continued like that. My co-teacher, who you're supposed to have a co-teacher in your class at all times, she put me into my first day of class, attended it, and then told me for the rest of the year I'm going to be too busy to be in your class. So on contract, I was supposed to have a Korean teacher with me at all times to help. I didn't. For the whole year, I was by myself. After the first day, I was by myself. There were random times when the principal would get angry and tell her to get in there, but that was pretty much it. It was a really, you know, survive or die situation. And there was no real training, which I'd expected. There was no training. And you know, that's how Hal and Steve English was born, right? You end up in these situations where you're in a school without a curriculum, and you end up in a program without any resources or any help from your coworkers. And so you've got to learn how to do it all on your own, and we're trying to save people that have to that want to avoid that. And so, you know, we made Hal and Steve English. And so I just continued to have these really hectic, frantic experiences, and I really didn't understand Korean culture at all, because Well, I think, frankly, I didn't open myself up to it, and there wasn't anybody that was trying to like immerse me in Korean culture. I didn't have anybody take me under their wing. And yeah, I arrived in March of that year. I ended up teaching by myself without any teaching experience or education on how to teach by Wednesday of that week. So on the second day I was there, I ended up teaching by myself these kids, and I would go online and search for middle school material, because it was a middle school ESL material, but all the kids were so mixed level and so low.
Middle school's tough to start out on.
Yeah. I really should have just been teaching elementary words to them, because it was countryside school, really low level. I had 50 or 60 kids to start with, and every day it was just the same. Wake up, go to that random bus stop, kind of sort of know which bus I'm taking, kind of sort of know the name of where I was supposed to get off, walk through a tomato greenhouse and a few other greenhouses and a few corn farms, go through a little mud tract, walk to the school, sit down, wait for class to begin. And there was so much free time at that school, actually. It was really small, that the principal asked me to make a textbook. But again, I had no idea what was going on. It was just a whirlwind of like last minute requests and last minute frantic things. So yeah, the whole I didn't make that textbook, and they weren't happy about that. But I just didn't know what was going on at all. Now, 5 years later, having lived here for a long time, knowing a bit of Korean, knowing a lot about the culture, and being married to a Korean wife and having a Korean kid, I can look back on that experience and be like, oh man, these people were really, really awesome. These people just wanted to be my friend. But it really doesn't feel like that when you first come over. It feels like, dude, what is this? Everybody's just frantically running around. Why are they doing this to me? Why are they doing this to me? It feels like every little omission, every last minute change is a lie that negatively affects your life. Now though, I realize, oh, these people are just rolling with it. Everybody's got to roll with it here. There's just, you're being inundated with so many million changes from the top down that you just got to roll with it. I had no idea. So I really regret that, actually. So about halfway through my first day, I realized that I'm either going to have to fly home or I'm going to have to suck it up. And I talked to a bunch of people. My parents said, yeah, you can come home. I had one aunt that said, you should really stay down there. And you know how you have parents that always, or people that always tell you, you really need to stick it through.
Yeah, right.
I didn't think it applied to this situation because it wasn't difficult. It was different. Like, it wasn't just that it was difficult. It was different than what I was told it was going to be. So I was thinking, I'm totally justified in not sticking this through. For some reason I did, though.
You don't know why.
I don't know why. I think I met the foreigner group, which you were part of. That's how I met Hal. There's a little foreigner network up here that I wasn't able to get in touch with for the first 6 months I was here, which really made it a very isolated experience. And the fact that I didn't realize that I had all these Korean coworkers who really wanted to be my friends, I mean, even though I messed all of that up, but even though I had these Korean coworkers who wanted to be my friends, I didn't realize that at the time, and I really regret that. But yeah, it was really lonely, or an isolated experience by myself, teaching that countryside school. And at 6 months in, I was going to go home, or I was going to stay, and I decided on saying, maybe it was because I met the foreigner group, maybe it was because I was too ashamed to do a midnight run, and a midnight run being when you pack up all your bags, head to the airport, and just go home. There's such a huge stigma attached to that. Everyone looks at you like you're a quitter, and you kind of leave your employer in a lurch, and they have to go find a new foreigner, and then you give the rest of the foreigner community a bad name. Like, nobody trusts you. So in my mind, I was totally justified. I was like, this is not what I signed up for, man. I felt in my mind, I'm not even teaching. These people aren't training me to teach. I'm just the dude that's supposed to be here. And especially it was the summer months too, right? So for those of you who don't know, in the summer, you've got a big break, about a month or two. And They wanted me to just come into work, sit down, and do nothing. They didn't give me anything to do. It's called desk warming. Now that I have lived here for a while, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. This is 8 hours paid to work on howlsteveenglish.com. This is 8 hours paid to read books. And they had a beautiful garden out in the back too. It's 8 hours paid to go hang out with my Korean coworkers and go garden and maybe, you know, bend that elbow a bit on some soju as we're planting tomatoes and cooking samgyeopsal. But I didn't know. I literally was looking for a professional experience after college. I wanted to be 9 to 5, go home and hang out with my own people in my own personal life. I didn't realize this was going to be a completely life-changing experience, or I would need to change my life to experience everything. So anyway, I guess that's pretty much my tale. At 6 months in, I decided to stay, and I looked at everything through a different lens, and I embraced more and more, and I changed my opinions more and more, and I'm still changing my opinions and my point of view now. But
So how about the end of that first year? What was your mindset after you completed that? And what did the school say? Were they like, hey, Steve, it's been a wild ride. Stay here another year? And what were you thinking? Were you like, I'm ready to get out of Korea? I can't remember. 'Cause that's, I think, important for
Yeah,
the
I guess-
listeners, too. It's like that a lot of people, you know, finish that first year.
So I guess at
Like,
6 months in, I decided that I was going to stay, right? And the terms of staying were I've got to actually put in more of an effort into these classes. I can't rely on these resources that I'm finding online because I know in my heart that they don't match these students. And
okay.
I decided in my mind, you know, it's really not my fault that my classes suck or I'm not good at my job. They didn't train me, they didn't give me resources, and they didn't give me a co-teacher. It's not my fault. We didn't even have a conversation about levels of the students and how to teach them and what they're currently learning. We didn't have anything like that. So I decided at 6 months, this is not enough, man. Your job is to teach these kids English. You've got to do that, or you got to do a better job of it. And then on top of that, personally, I decided that I'm going to spend more time with my coworkers, or I didn't realize what I was doing this at the time, but basically I was changing my mindset into the more of the Korean mindset of your colleagues at work are similar to your family. You owe them a certain obligation to have relationships with them that are more similar to family relationships than they are to just cordial coworker relationships. So I just want to be cordial at the beginning. Hey, what's up? 안녕하세요. What's up? I'm gonna go into my cubby now. But you can't do that here. And I really resisted that, but I embraced it after that. So I was out there farming with my coworkers. I was bending the elbow with them on the few school nights. They had on-campus houses because it's countryside. A lot of teachers live there, and there'd be nights where they were grilling up mackerel or samgyeopsal, and I'd be a little iffy. I'd be a little standoffish sometimes still because I didn't want to spend all my time there after work, especially because I would be so tired or I'd be gross. You know, just a long day of no air conditioning in the countryside. You don't want to sit next to somebody when you're eating samgyeopsal. But I did make an effort, so I changed my mind, and then at the year's end, we really had just like in general, a really positive experience together, all of us. And so they told me they weren't going to hire me again because I did a bad job making that textbook that they asked me to do at the beginning. So I hate to say that I had a really lovely experience and then say something negative, because I've been saying too many negative things. Although I want everybody to know my heart has changed. I realized that I was at fault there because, you know, it's a new culture and you kind of got to fit into the culture. So I want everyone to know, even though I said my experience 5 years ago, my point of view 5 years ago was negative. Now I realize that I was wrong about that. I should have embraced it. I should have been more open-minded. But yeah, no, they weren't going to hire me again. The principal was angry that I didn't make that textbook. So they wrote me a negative review. Yeah,
Wow.
Apparently. You know, I don't know what happens to those reviews, where they go. But I ended up with about a month left to go. They told me they weren't going to hire me, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to go teach in Seoul. I'm going to go do this.
So you did
I
want to
wanted
stay
to
in
move
Korea.
on to the next step.
The
I wanted, because, you know, it was a really fun time hanging out with you because we met 6 months in, and there's that whole network of foreigners, and I thought, wow, this is really similar to college. And I really did enjoy college. So why don't I head over to Seoul, where it's supposed to be even more like a bigger college? And I know all of our true teachers on here are really hating me right now, because I'm the typical foreigner who comes and teaches ESL abroad that just really gives everybody a bad name. But that's what I wanted to do. And I wanted to either do that or go home to law school. And because I had deferred law school for a year before coming here. So that was my plan. And I communicated that to my school. And I remember I had a friend, Royale, and he told me, he's always been right about everything. He says it in a very direct way, so it's actually frightening when he tells you the truth about a topic. But he always has the best and most honest answers for everything. He told me, Steve, don't go back home. If you don't have a real plan, don't go back home. Because really, why do you go back home is because most people don't have a real plan. There's a lot of peer pressure. We were talking about this the other day. There's a lot of peer pressure from your family, your friends. Everyone says, I miss you. I can't wait for you to come home. Why are you there still? When are you coming home? When are you coming back to the real life? So it's a combination of people telling you that you're not living your real life, that you need to, the only way to get on to the next part of life is to be back in your home country and follow the traditional route. And it's people saying that they can't live without you. And my friend Royale told me that he went back also after Korea for a short while, and all those people that said, I miss you, I need you, we need to live life like we used to live life, I really miss you, they forget about you real quick after about a week. After about a week, they don't miss you. They don't want to see you. They got their own lives. They got work, they got kids, they live an hour and a half away. So even though you flew back 20 hours, 14 hours to get back to them, you know, they're too busy for you. They got stuff going on. And he was right. In the end, what happened was my school at the last minute asked me to resign because they didn't want to go through the process of hiring another foreigner, and they thought
that's what I expected to hear was the resign.
Yeah, instead of going through the process, they just wanted to keep with me, and I said no. And now actually I remember something really funny. They wanted to see me, they forced me to buy my ticket home inside the school. Because I thought, well, that's really, why are they bothering me so much about buying my ticket? Because I'm a lazy man by nature. I'll buy it like the day of. They, I guess, were worried I was going to stay in Korea forever, or stay in Korea for a while and teach illegally, and I assumed that would have a negative effect on their public school. But now that I think about it, that was a really weird thing. They forced me to buy my airplane ticket in school because I was just being lazy about it. So I guess that's just an interesting anecdote. I mean, I'll try not to be negative, but there are a few weird things that popped up. So I didn't end up going to Seoul because I wanted to do everything really casually, and they weren't letting me do things casually. And I guess that little bit of a barrier from my public school, that's like, all right, you either have to get a contract somewhere or you need to buy your ticket back home in front of us, was too stressful and too much pressure, and I didn't really want to, like, I couldn't choose where I wanted to work in Seoul. It's too much. So I decided I'd go home. And Royale was right. After a week, everybody who wanted to see me didn't want to see me. My parents got tired of me after 2 weeks. I ended up renting a small room in a 3-bedroom apartment next to my old university and living pretty slovenly, just being unhappy. And law school, actually, I missed law school by a little bit, so I reapplied to I think Washington University in St. Louis, and I was gonna go there the next year. But yeah, I went home, and everybody that said they missed me didn't miss me, or got tired of me really quickly, and I started thinking about Korea more, and I realized that law school was the expectation for myself and would make sense in a way, but there's something about living abroad that I really enjoyed, and I think most people really enjoy living abroad. And since I didn't really have any obligations to do anything else, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna live here in America for this 1 year, and after that, I think I'm gonna go back to Korea. And it wasn't that type of mindset, but I left it open. But yeah, so to sum it all up, my first year was pretty typical angsty, angry foreigner experiencing last minute changes and the frantic nature of relationships and work here. And when I look back on it, I really regret not embracing it more. Because if I just had an open mind and went with the flow and rolled with the punches, it would have been those relationships would have lasted forever, and the experience would have been a lot better. And there was really no reason to be negative about the experience now that we've been teaching here for a while. Everything about that school was great. Everything about that first year was great. They gave me a garden to grow my own vegetables. They invited me out to backyard barbecue parties in the courtyard of the school pretty regularly. They let me do my own thing in class uninterrupted without somebody constantly telling me that I'm doing it the wrong way. They gave me so much free time to make a book and to make my own resources and to work on my own websites. They would have taught me Korean if I would have asked them. Now I'm doing that 5, 6, 7 years later, learning Korean on my own. It's just all about how you view things, and it's hard to change your views. But to be happy, you need to.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't exist anymore, right? It kind of sort of exists, but they've cut it for the most part, the public school program. It's just one of those magical things that happens sometimes. Like, this country, modernized super quick. Government got in a scramble. We got to learn English. They created this real cushy job. We got to get Americans down here. And it's just like this thing that happened. And there was a wave of us that caught that window of time. And, it's gone.
But yeah, I don't know about you, but now that I think back about that first year, I'm shocked by my negative behavior. Or not my behavior, but the way I perceived it. The way I perceived it at that time was just... You try to be open-minded, but there was just this idea of a deal. I was so overwhelmed with this idea of, I said I'll do this, you said you'll do this, done. And after living in East Asia for a while, you realize a deal is a live, ongoing thing, and you can't get hung up on it, or else you're just going to be really not happy. If somebody says this is $1 and they change it to $1.10 the next day, no reason to be angry, man. If you're understanding in that moment, the next time you make a deal with that person, they'll be understanding in the next moment for you. There's a reason that it's 10 cents more. It's not just 10 cents more because of blah, blah, blah. It's 10 cents more because, maybe the dude's having a hard time. Maybe the dude just wanted to make a deal with you really quickly, but he didn't realize that actually I can't make this deal because I'll lose money unless I charge 10 cents more. And sometimes it's just little changes to a deal don't need to ruin your time. You've got to be more open to them.
It's so funny too, because my story's the opposite. We won't get into that, but I was super ideal. I idealized everything, and I was really naive, and I had really the opposite kind of thing went down.
Yeah, as my buddy Timbo would say, I'm all about expectations. So, yeah. But anyway,
But yeah, there are a lot of foreigners. Yeah, I'll just add a quick note here. To break down Steve's experience for any other teachers out there, it's you come here, and being a Westerner, you cling to that contract. That's the one thing you have. Laws are strong. This is the agreement, and that's everything to us. But in Korea, the verbal contract trumps the written contract, and that's where it can turn into a massacre. And that sounds like kind of what happened to you. You had it was the only thing you had to go by, right? And they're like, well, what's he pointing to this contract for?
Well, I guess there's also just like a leap of faith. Like here, everybody, it's a really trusting place. And I guess the best way to say it is going from whenever somebody lies to you a little bit, you assume that they're lying a lot of it, right? And so if I can't trust this, I can't trust anything. That's not the case here. I can't trust if this thing, it's not about trust, it's not about lies, it's not about deception really. It's about like, all right, he wants to change this thing. He wants me to teach this. He wants me to do that. All right, all right. Next time I'm gonna ask him to do this for me. Then it's really a lot of tit for tat, and it was just a really scary experience. I guess if I really think about it, it must have been scary for me back then. But yeah, after about 6 months, I think culture shock, it might be what people combine all that stuff into. After about 6 months, I just really opened up and I really allowed it to be a great experience for myself. And yeah, definitely shouldn't have went home. But going home, I was able to start an agency for digital marketing, which allowed me to come back as an investor and open these academies and open this website up. So yeah, that was really great. I guess I don't know if that was too much or too little or not enough anecdote-y or...
I think that was good. It's like, just basically a chronicle of your first year. So I think it's like a good chapter of...
Yeah, there's some really weird times as well. We had a bunch of weird times, but I'll save that for the next one. How about on the next time you tell us about your first year in Korea?
Yeah, right. Yeah, we can contrast.
I think so.
the
We'll make a trilogy of it. You'll tell us your story next time, then we'll compare and contrast. All right, folks. Thanks for checking out the How and Steve English podcast again. Remember, head over to our website, howandsteveenglish.com, where you can get your hands on a lot of awesome ESL games for kids and adults and lessons and who-dads and who-done-its and whatever. It's really great. First month trial for free, as always.
And let's get in touch with one of our listeners and do an interview
Yeah,
of their first
yeah.
year as
So
well.
guys, hit us up at steve@howandsteveenglish.com, or if you just search How and Steve English on Instagram, Twitter, anywhere, you'll be able to find us. Get in touch with us. We'll love to have you on here on the podcast, and yeah, we'll set it up. It won't be a big deal. You just head over to your local internet cafe, plug in, log in. It'll be good times. All right, catch you guys next time.